DCarsonCPA, MFC on the lines. This is about entity and individual accounting and talking about how it all connects to a big system and what the importance is of the accounting. We start off by saying we want your data. Of course we want your data because what we do with it is we move your raw data to actionable insight through the process of accounting. That's what we do at DCarsonCPA. We take your data from your expenses, from your transactions, whether it's individual or entity. We help to classify it and bring it into the models of accounting, which helps to organize your data into actionable financial statements that will help you understand yourself or your business as a financial entity in a global economy and where you are and how you connect to the broader picture. In this quick video, we'd like to explain that through accounting, where data and technology meet. That's where data meets technology is with accounting. Today, in this day and age, we're all working together, so data, accounting, technology are all interconnected. But the skills of accounting are a very specialized skill set to help you work with raw data and bring it through technology to the output point where you have financials. And financials can be in many different formats. You've got 4 lines of essential financials. That's neither here nor there, but we'll talk about that later. 4 statements, 4 lines of financials, being accounting, tax, GAAP or IFRS financials, and then management financials. And then over here, basically, accounting equals a classification, quantification. I'm going to go ahead and call it a science. Some people won't agree, but I think it is the science of how we organize financial data. So for me, it's sufficient to call it a science of the organization of financial data for the purposes of the users of financial statements. Now, that's not an end-all, be-all definition. There's a very precise definition that you can find by the AICPA, more formal lines, but in a general sense, I just want you to understand this from kind of a tech meets accounting standpoint, that it's a classification and quantification science insofar as technology and accounting are concerned. Now we're coming over here, we're going to talk about who's involved with accounting, who are the clients of accounting. A man or a woman could be an entity, the man or the woman forms an entity, or they form an entity together. They're in the economy, they exchange goods and services for value. There's an exchange of dollar or property that can be valued in money. That creates a data pool, and data pools in the right hands of DCarsonCPA or accountants, tax accountants, and other persons become financials. And financials are basically a measure. They're controlled by FASB and GAAP as the U.S. standards. And they basically connect data, and they have something to do with explaining supply and demand in the economy at an entity level. It actually really doesn't look out to the bigger picture of supply and demand, but you could say that the financials were a function of supply and demand to explain the ways that money or that resources are exchanged within an entity to achieve objectives like growth, efficiency, improvements, and operations in the economic cycle. So now I'm going to take this to a broader picture. It's one world. We have a fundamental rule, which is a rule of economics. We've got unlimited wants and needs matched to relatively scarce resources. Now this is a simple but very important line about accounting, especially in today's world. More people, more challenges on the environment, many more things going on. And so we need to hark back to this rule that it says, about supply and demand in the economy. It's a fundamental economic rule about unlimited wants and needs matched to relatively scarce resources. When you begin to think about that, you internalize the value of financials to an entity, and the value of macro financials to an economy. Macro financials are where the individuals, families, and entities roll up, and they're part of the bigger economy. And then macro financials will explain what's going on. Now, in order to encounter global problems where we all meet, a point where nations, the nations of free trade, nations that work together in reasonable terms and have good ideas about global citizenry and where we all connect, where they meet in the economy, and where you also have states and regions as a breakdown of a nation, and you have cities underneath that, and you have in there entities, might be financial entities, companies or financial entities, and then you have beneath that individuals and families. But really, individuals and families are citizen stakeholders of a nation, and there's an important stake that all individual families and individuals and families have in the governance of resources in the world. So we live in a very interesting time and a complicated time because there's more and more people, more and more limited resources, and a necessity to find ways to work together. And yet to work together is highly complex because you've got individuals and families that form communities. They form communities with entities. They roll up to cities. They roll up to states, to regions, to a nation. And then the whole thing repeats on a global scale for something like 270 nations across the globe. when you think about that, this is an interesting time, and some very insightful and perceptive folks have began to think about there's things we have to price in that aren't necessarily direct financial aims. And what they're trying to do in a positive sense, they formed a group called SASB, which is the Sustainable Accounting Standards Boards. And they're trying to work to understand how do those things that are not directly goods and services, that are not perhaps immediate dollar value exchanges, but talk more to a long-term horizon where financials have typically been not so good, because financials will measure a shorter term, a year, 2 years, but if you wanted to roll out to 20 years and what's the effect of supply and demand and where we're consuming resources, then you need some better metrics. So they're trying to design something at SASB which is commendable. They're trying to find a way to deal with the economic quotient that's beyond financials. Values like resources and the use of resources. So it's good for anyone to connect into SASB. Our world is a line of looking at all these things. Really we're functioning at individual and family levels with financials, but individuals and families are stakeholders in the outcomes where entities are doing business, entities being industry, nonprofits, NGOs, and government, connecting to states and regions, because of course entities also define state government, regional government. And then those things are defined again at a national level. So you've got an ecosystem, and within the ecosystem there's a global line of stakeholders, which are individuals and families. We're focused first line, of course, on the stakeholders at home because it's where we are. So you start looking at the city, the state, the region, and then the nation. But there's also this line of there are shared resources. It's a globe, and we have unlimited wants and needs as a human condition, and they're matched to relatively scarce resources. One earth, one world to work with. So the sensible line is to find ways to work with financials, to incorporate some of these longer term objectives to financials. And I guess the benefit I'd like to share with you about DCarsonCPA is we think very much about the individual families and entities lines, but we're also thinking about the big picture, and I hope that's something that will appeal to you and speak to you of the value of working with DCarsonCPA, because we're a globally minded firm. We're thinking about the needs of our cities, our states, our regions, the nation where we meet as stakeholders, and how we meet with other nations and free trades, our allies and other people with a good idea about trade and building a meaningful place where we trade goods and services. And of course, you got to mention in the global lines there's risk, and as much as there's also risks for individuals and families and entities, you want to be secure with your data and smart in a complex world. But in the aggregate, this is a model. DCarsonCPA works with your financials, and we seek to find ways to help on challenges for the cities, states, regions, and the nation. And we're hopeful that that's something to echo to your sense of purpose, an opportunity that a business that's small can have a big impact, because if we think about all these things, communicate and connect you to them, it makes you a better decision maker. And when financial decision making happens in the economy, it impacts you. It happens at the city, state, regional, and national level, and all of that stuff feeds into your entity and your individual family lines. And we want to give you the opportunity to connect with that forgotten line about policy, because policy is a huge factor about your financials today in the economy. So DCarsonCPA in the aggregate is a line that thinks smart about individual and family financials, entity financials, the individual family stakeholders, the responsibilities of entities being industry, government, nonprofits, and NGOs, with accountability to individuals and families as stakeholders in the nation, and the broader picture of where we all meet in the economy with an eye to sustainability and other key points. I hope that'll interest you. DCarsonCPA, net, we're here to help on your financials, and we're here to make a little bit of a difference, to leave the world a little bit of a better place, if we may, in small ways through building with knowledge. I'm Dean Carson. We're here to support you on services. Connect with us, and remember that we firmly mean that when we're talking about this global picture, is that it's to help the cities, the states, the regions, and the nation, and with an understanding that we are a nation that works with other nations. So there's lines where the awareness of global financials and sustainability can help to a better big picture. Nothing's perfect. There's risk. There's needs for security and controls. But there's also an opportunity to think optimistically that awareness, the tool of knowledge, is a great building tool, and your ability to be more aware helps you be a better part of the broad ecosystem. That's what we're about, and we're here to help. I'm Dean Carson. Please drop by, and we'd be happy to support your needs on services. Thank you.